Good morning, everyone. It's Coffee and Politics 101 with Cydney Walker. Thank you so much for joining in. Of course, I have a trio of beauty on the show today. I have Katherine back on the show, who is on with the discussion of children and guns, representing the Dallas Jewish Conservatives. And today I am joined by Tawanna, who is an amazing woman. Discussed with her the entire Fair Park RFP process, how to get qualified, how to look at different certifications as a business. So this is a much needed discussion because a lot of people would like to do business with government agencies and municipalities, and they may not necessarily know how to start, or they may have a great idea, but not know how to implement it, and get in front of the people that they need to, that can make those decisions. So, ladies, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yes.
Happy to be
Yes.
here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So, as you know, with Coffee and Politics, I do bring guests back on because they are awesome and amazing, and I am so fortunate to know such wonderful people. So, since I cannot toot your horn enough, I want you to tell everyone what makes you so awesome and amazing. So go ahead, Katherine, reintroduce yourself to Coffee and Politics.
Well, the last time I was here talking about a problem that pretty much anybody with children can identify with, and I don't know, I guess the thing that makes me amazing, I could comfortably say, is I focus on the solutions.
There we go.
So, and this, you know, has been a topic you've been actually covering quite a bit with private and public relationships.
Yes.
That's a solution we want to see in the marketplace. The marketplace is definitely changing.
Yes.
Government contractors are becoming more commonplace than they ever had been, as opposed to government employees.
Yes.
That's true.
And so I like to be in that space where I'm working against the obstacles, overcoming those, focusing on the solutions.
And that's a great point that you bring up, because a lot of governments are looking to streamline, services and their budgets, and also staffing. And private entities are able to come in and take part of the funds that the cities use from the tax base, and then also bring in private monies to bring those services to the general public. So I know you have a wealth of knowledge about that. So
I've been a little busy. Yes, I have been. Oh my goodness. Well, again, I'm Tawanna Heyward-Bey. I am a serial entrepreneur. I have been in business as a entrepreneur for, oh my goodness, since 2006. I bootstrapped my business. I worked from home for a year researching my market, which at that time was human resources in the staffing industry. And I put a lot of time and a lot of energy into networking, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, but into networking and understanding and learning how do I leverage what I do, my goods and services, and I learned about the certification process. Minority Business Enterprise, which is an MBE, the Women Business Enterprise, which is a WBE, a Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, a SBE. I can go on. I can go on. There are lots of categories, and who can certify me to do business with these public entities, private, and Fortune 500 companies as well.
So that's a big thing then for government agencies, because there's a lot going on with making sure that women and minorities are getting a piece of the pie.
Yes.
Go ahead, Katherine.
Yes.
Well, you brought up the need for networking, and so the idea really, if you're trying to get involved in government contracts, is to cover as many of these boxes, check them off as you can. If you are a minority and a woman, you have advantages because you're able to give the government employees a reason to filter out your business and your skill set over all of the other applicants. And I think probably the biggest thing to remember is that they're looking for you to follow these guidelines to make their job easier.
Absolutely.
And then the networking part is critical, because especially if you have any type of innovative, contribution, you're going to want to put yourself in the middle of conversations they are already having.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I think, when you talk about, I always talk about networking that connects.
Okay.
You have to know who you need to network with if you're going to do business with the government or public municipalities. Okay. Because there's a process. And I'm a process and procedure or standard operating procedures nut.
Okay.
Because you cannot do business at this level.
Right.
As an entrepreneur, I had the opportunity to win contracts after getting my certification with companies like Bombardier, DFW International Airport, 3 contracts with Dallas Independent School District, Dallas Housing Authority, Tri-Fowlet Software. That is a private sector company. And if you want to know who they are, your kids, the textbooks, the barcoding, they are the people.
Okay.
I staff for them in California, in Alabama, in Texas. So how do you get in front, the networking that connects? Right. How do you get in front of these people?
Yes, because
what's the process to that?
A manager.
Bingo.
Bingo.
And
that's
you also
right.
want to hear what the problems are.
You have to.
And that's what, if you go and you put yourself in the conversations they're already having and listen before you speak, then you know how to address whatever it is that internally they don't have the resources to cover. That's where your role is especially critical in any given conversation that you might hear, well, we've got this person out and then this person's leaving and this person's transitioning.
Or we want to outsource this service.
Right.
Exactly.
Then there are 2 things you know. You know that person's quality of life would be much improved by having the workload spread out, and that they, for some reason, have resources preventing them from completing that.
Right.
So already right there, you can improve their quality of life. And networking is so much more about what I can do for you than what you can do for me.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we just have to look at our government entities that way, but also being meticulous in your paperwork, taking advantage of any kind of certifications, credentials, or advantages that your particular business qualifies for.
Right. So that brings up a really good point in question. So let's say that, I want to jump into these waters.
Okay.
I have a niche.
Okay.
But I'm still relatively new.
Okay.
So I'm getting into the conversations and networking, and I'm trying to present a new idea or service that a municipality could provide, or an agency could be providing, but they're not. And I want to pitch that idea to them.
Okay.
I would caution you. That would be my advice.
Okay, so how would you caution someone?
I would caution you before you bring ideas to the table, because in the government, most of their contracts, they must send out for an RFP or bid.
Okay.
And if you take your intellectual property and say, you know what you're not doing, but you should be, then they're like, that's great. They can't have loyalty to you.
Okay.
They must put out a public RFP.
Not only that, it's not a part of the process. Going back to the process.
Okay.
Let's talk about the process. Okay. So you're a small business. First thing you need to be thinking, you have to understand, is when municipalities are looking at you and the government are looking at you, they are evaluating if you are a viable business.
Legitimate.
Because it's liability on
what
their
does
part
that mean? Exactly.
Yes.
So what does that mean? If you're in business less than 3 years, okay, who have you done business with? Do you even have taxes? Do you have a payroll? Do you have the capacity with insurance? Can you bond?
Right.
Okay. So they're looking at all these kind of things. But if you're in business over 3 years, then you may be considered a qualified bidder.
Okay.
Then you, as a small business, you have to evaluate, do the homework, do the research. Okay, these solicitations are out on what we call the street.
Okay.
And do I want to bid on this RFP, request for proposal, RFB, request for bids. Every now and then, RFQ, request for qualifications. Exactly. Then,
which just means they're going to put you on their vendor list in case they need a thing.
Even with that, you have to register. Again, back to the process. There is a process that you have to follow as a small business owner. You have to register to do business before you can even talk to, quote, a buyer or an entity representative is what they're called.
The person that can pull the trigger.
The person that can pull a trigger, who knows the snapshot. They know the history. Yes. They know the past performer and vendor. They know the numbers, where the money is at. Right. They know everything about that particular solicitation. And that's typically the buyer. And so back to the networking that connects. I wrote an article about this, so in my mind, I'm a blogger, I'm a writer. Everybody that knows me, I'm a writer. You can find it on LinkedIn. The story is there. But going back to the networking that connects, you have to build a relationship with the buyer. You have to find out, well, who's the buyer for this RFP? Set up an appointment. Now, you need to know they're only going to see you if you register.
So it's good preparation makes good work.
Preparation.
You though, in the case that you presented, should not be discouraged that you can't do something for your municipality in that kind of hypothetical. I would say find out who the contractors are, who are servicing that. Yes, because that's
an avenue.
Yeah,
it is.
With government, you must remember to put the people who are accepting these contracts and bids in a position to not fail, to be successful. Right. So being established, credible, preparing appropriately so that when you go out and introduce yourself to whoever it is that's the decision maker, they have a line of faith they can walk out on.
Absolutely right. I think, Katherine, you're bringing up an incredible point here. Again, as you can see, I'm going to be redundant because I know we have listeners who are small business owners and they're listening today. And people want to do business. They want to get started.
Well, this is the age of entrepreneur right now.
Come on now.
Yeah, everybody's.
There's no better time than now to start your own thing, build a business, grow a business. But again, we got to go back to, how do I do that? Where do I start? The ABCs of business, starting from the beginning and working that process and those procedures. Otherwise, you can't get in front of these people. So back to the networking that connect. These contractors, these prime contractors, these general contractors.
The proven entities.
Where do you find them? With this solicitation.
Really good question.
Yes.
I'm getting started and I want to cut my teeth.
Yes, ma'am.
How do I find Katherine?
The pre-bid meeting is where many of them will be for these solicitations.
If your aim is to make, first off, to be a business owner and an entrepreneur, you are taking the hard route if government contracts are the first kind of niche you want to work yourself into. But if you're compelled by your spirit of altruism and you just want to fix a problem that you identify with, it really starts at town hall. City officials are required to be there and hear from the residents, and that's a very safe place to flesh out issues, concepts, and ideas. In your side and staffing, you're not going to hear that part, but for many of the contractors who are going to look for, whatever it is, landscaping, janitorial services, your business name here, right? Those are good, accessible places to at least meet the people who are in those conversations. The local politicians will tell you what committees they're on. You will hear opportunities based on your own skill set. That's the best way to get into the conversation. And to try to go and knock doors and sit down with your state representative who ultimately will make laws that open up contracting opportunities. And that's a good way to network from the top down as you form relationships.
Use those relationships.
They're going to tell you what bills they have, what committees they're on. You're going to hear it, and so it'll just start throwing up sparks. And then you go to those conversations, and you stay in those conversations. And that's where the people who decide on the contracts and send out RFPs live.
So I do want to bring up a really good example, and Tawanna, you and I talked a lot about Fair Park and the process that was involved with Fair Park. So initially, some of the backstory with Fair Park is there was one entity that networked, was discussing the process, well, not discussing the process, but discussing the need for managing Fair Park and bringing more services and rehabbing and bringing life back to Fair Park. But the contract was going to get turned over to one person, and as we know, with government agencies, a bid must be put out. So other qualifiers.
If it's over 100K, and we know this is over 100K.
This was a 20-year deal with 2 5-year options. Yes, it was going to be over $100,000 easy.
Right.
So there were some legal discussions about it, and then the process began through procurement with that pre-bid meeting, discussing what was going to be looked for and what was needed, and what kind of bidders would be able to qualify to put in their proposal for Fair Park.
Right.
So that was big in someone using their network. So how do you still use your network to gain an advantage? Because that was part of the complaint, was access that this one entity had compared to the other qualified bidders. So yeah, how do you navigate those waters where you're not necessarily being viewed as having that unfair advantage?
And you're talking about as a small business?
Yes.
Well, one of the first things as a small business I have found, and we talked a little bit about, I started as a staffing business and had over 1,000 people on the payroll, certified as a MBE, WBE. Today, I'm coaching and consulting small business owners on how to do this. Because it's so complex, and we started out talking about our passion. My passion is people. I'm a human resources person. I'm all about the people getting their piece of the pie.
Yes.
So to answer that question, as an entrepreneur and a small business owner, to be able to understand, get with someone like myself who is a coach, and understand that how you gain access is through certification. Because to qualify, to even be able to play at this level, this entity in particular is looking at being able to use those set aside dollars with minority business enterprises, with women business enterprise. And so understanding what that process is, applying through the application process with a third-party certifying agency, applying for your certification, it gets you in the game now. Because now what happens when you get certified is, wrote a book about this, so you know I'm pretty passionate about this, is now you're in the database. And this particular solicitation, you get a notification. You get an email. You get to know about what's going on and who's involved. And when meetings come up with the city council or at a pre-bid or anything that's going on that relates to this particular contract, I know we're talking about Fair Park, you know about it. And you can be having conversation with the key players like I did.
And then the next step, has to be that you present a plan that's really easy to understand.
That's the bid.
And that just addresses the problems that they put out. Because if you start to get creative, even though you know it's what they need and they might totally agree, it becomes too complex to approve. And right there, I really think in particular with this Fair Park project, it is a case in point example of, we have an opportunity to transform a landmark. It's highly recognizable. If you are lost, and you look up and see the Ferris wheel from any part of, the surrounding area, you can orient yourself. That's a billboard for a lifestyle that we embrace here. And what we're doing with that park could change everything. We could take the entire thing off the grid, have it function on a daily basis, be publicly accessible for cool stuff that's relevant, and being an example.
But it can become the
but we won't do that with it.
Absolutely.
But we won't do that with it though.
Why do you feel that way?
Because the situation with Fair Park is they've got a problem and no one to manage it. And right now they just want to do something different and have it managed. An idea like mine,
go ahead.
It's just a little too hard to approve because it has too many things. So we really need to take opportunities like this to open that up for discussion before engaging a management company.
That is a good point that you bring up, because I know with one of the bidders, their primary concern was preserving the buildings here.
Right.
And
That's a big one.
granted, they are historic landmarks.
Absolutely.
But we do have quite a few empty buildings here.
Yeah.
We've lost some major institutions. The Dallas Museum of Arts eventually moved over by Woodall Rogers. That was here. The Nature and Science Museum left and took the school with it. That closed, so now it is the Ross Perot Museum right off of Woodall Rogers. You know, we do have some things that happen here, and it's not as dead as people like to think, but there's opportunity for so much more life to be here.
And if we open that conversation up across the round table with innovators before it's put into an RFP, then we can talk about things like how important it is to preserve the buildings, but how about that big waterway that runs through the middle of Fair Park, which could easily generate power? How about that big sky, whatever the thing is there, that has a cover and concave solar panels? How that could generate power? How about we make it possible for the little commuters that run around to fuel up on site? There are so many things we can be doing. Just changing out the air conditioning schedule could actually generate power and cool the buildings, and it's
and
hot.
I can see that she's very green and thinking about things that are not necessarily
I just want to take
Texas.
one stone and kill as many birds as I can with it.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's phenomenal. I was also thinking too, just to piggyback off of what Katherine is saying here, I think from a perspective as bidding on these contracts, knowing what's going on, being a part of the conversation. As a small business owner, I want to be able to share with the audience here that there are opportunities to have these conversations. What I appreciate, especially here in the Dallas County, in this area, we've got our contractors associations. They're real good about this.
We have business chambers.
Yeah, we got our business chambers. I know the Black Contractors Association, Hispanic Contractors Association,
the Asian American,
the tri-ethnic chambers. They are very good about keeping their hand on the pulse with what is going on, communicating with the community through memberships, and many of the members are certified or they're learning about the process and how to grow their business. And they are also partnered with the airports as it relates to these relationships. Two things are important in all of this. Resources and relationships. And baby, they go hand in hand.
And then when you perform well, the cycle goes right back.
And it goes back right.
And that's a great point to bring up, that relationships are paramount with anything that you want to do. So I am so happy to have Tawanna and Katherine on the show. And Tawanna's written a book on getting certified.
I did.
So we're here this morning at Fair Park African American Museum, as we always are on Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock. Kicking off the show and a great dialogue here. So I just want to bring up a conversation or a comment here that Tony Morris says that government contracts equal taxpayer dollars, which is guaranteed money.
Absolutely.
I think that's part of the problem.
And why do you feel like that is part of the problem?
Because that means the contracts go out with very wide margins so that the thing gets done. But the private and public relationship takes that tight budget and uses less of those taxpayer dollars and leans on privately held resources. So we're going to see that dynamic change a little bit, but that's why that high-hanging fruit is worth going through all the work to become an approved contractor because they pay well. They have a budget amount that's allocated, and if your bid covers what's on their check sheet and it fits within that dollar amount, then you do well and your business can thrive and succeed.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about the government, they spend an astonishing amount of money. Try $500 billion.
Wow. Here in the city.
In the country.
Oh, wow.
in the country. And yes, we get a piece of that pie in Texas too.
Right.
And 23% of that is mandatory set aside for small businesses.
Okay.
And so I think it depends on what the need is.
Okay.
How that all is going to play out, what the need is, what that solicitation is, the scope of work, the location of where that scope of work is going to take place. Because every state, every city, is going to be a different situation.
And
It's going to look different.
Yes, and we talked about that a little bit last night, where if I'm going to look at a bid that could be possibly in like Tyler or Midland, which are well-known cities here in Texas, but they're not Dallas, they're not a Fort Worth, they're not a Houston or Austin. So I would imagine that their bid process would be, I guess, more stringent because their dollar amounts are tighter because their tax base isn't as big. Or do you feel like maybe no?
I don't know that it would be more stringent. A lot of cities have had the resources to be able to put their process online.
Okay.
And I feel like maybe to me, that would feel more stringent because then there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through.
Right.
They'll have to have a man on the phone. At the other cities that might not have embraced technology, it's still kind of the old-fashioned,
very manual.
Yeah, which I think feels more accessible to people, and it also makes it very then easy to filter once it's coming through.
Sure.
Sure.
But their budgets aren't as robust.
They're not, and I think just from past experiences, and then I have clients in some of these smaller areas, and I think the process can be a little bit more stringent because the expectation is different. And the process, what they expect for you to do, starting with, like I shared earlier, being registered, and them even identifying who is qualified to do this, to do this work.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The competition may not be.
It may not be.
Yes.
Really, I think the other thing that we hadn't touched on yet that's really important if you're trying to enter into this sector of the marketplace is your response time. You don't have a lot of time. Once you see something that, a bid that's up, you need to get working on it right away. Take it as seriously as you would a lifetime opportunity, because that's what it is. So in the smaller areas, the more rural communities, you may not have as big of a pot that's a payout, but your name and recognition in the community changes dramatically.
Yes, it does.
And then the rest of it's just like you planted the giving tree.
Yeah, you become the preferred person.
Yes,
everyone is coming for jobs with you.
Absolutely.
And then when other opportunities come up, like you said, you get the emails, you're notified because you're part of the database, you're proven, they put you through the rigor.
And you're credible to the neighboring communities.
Absolutely. Yes. And the other thing here is, again, going back to that process, you have to know how this works.
Okay.
When a bid comes out, it always has a deadline.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
And so you have to pay attention to what is the deadline, date, and time.
Okay.
And you have to pay attention because oftentimes bids come out with amendments.
Okay.
There may be an amendment that's, yes, ma'am.
So what would cause an amendment during the bidding process? Because if I got a notification 90 days ago, they've given ample time for you to put your proposal together, your qualifications on your documentation, and then let's say 3 weeks before the deadline, they do an amendment. Because even with Fair Park, that kind of happened. They sent all the qualifiers bids back and said, hey, I need you to do this. After they have done their presentation.
A lot of times it's discovery. It's an issue of discovery. Something came up. Exactly, an obstacle, a challenge. Maybe somebody asked the right question, and somebody said, one of the buyers, somebody that's a part of that planning committee said, oh, we need to make some changes here, and we need to put this back out with this change. And as a bidder, you better be paying attention, because if you miss it, one of the other things, that's the other thing we did not talk about. You could be disqualified from the process because you missed
Yeah,
Oh,
so
wow.
it goes right back to, I mean, we're talking about people having
Yes.
a conversation
Yes.
on this side and on that side.
Yes.
On that side, they are the official authority. So
Right.
we must bend to them.
Right.
If they come up and realize, "Ooh, whoopsie,
Yes.
you don't have the right to get mad because you want their business.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And, it's
And you're
just
going to
been-
win the business by focusing on executing whatever they
Exactly.
expect. It's just as simple as that.
All right. So I do want to take the time to take questions or comments from the audience members. Don't be quiet. I know.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy at all. Yes, ma'am.
So you said that you need to become an approved contractor. I know you mentioned the certifications, but what else does that look like?
That's a process. Depending on your goods and services, as a business owner, you want to be evaluating and thinking, who do I want to do business with? Do I want to do business with Fortune 500 companies, private sector? Do I want to do business with the public municipalities in my district, in my community? You as a business owner have to evaluate and think about your business, what you're selling, what you're offering, and you want to answer that question first. And then you want to get with a third-party agency, somebody like myself who is a coach, who can talk you through, guide you through, coach you through, train you through the process of the certification, because the certification is offered to minority business enterprise. Well, Tawanna, who's the minority business enterprise? That's somebody who's African American. That's somebody who's Hispanic.
Or Jewish.
That's somebody who is Asian. That is somebody who is Native American. That's the criteria on paper with every third-party certifying agency. So you have to think, well, do I want to be an MBE? Maybe I want to do business with private sector and I want to be certified, you're a woman. As a WBE, what is that process? What's that application process look like? Okay, we have certifications for the LBGT community. You might want to apply for a certification for that to do business. So all these things have to be evaluated. You have to research, you have to think through, okay, this is what I'm selling, this is who I want to do business with, and then go next to the certification process, because what does certification do? Let's answer that question.
Yes.
It provides access and opportunity. It will put you in front of the game decision makers in the game that can say, oh, wow, you're selling this product, you're doing it this way, because they are writing the bids. They're writing the bids. And so it's a process, but that's where you want to begin.
You also asked what else you're gonna need. So I would go and pick your targets, maybe 5, go to their website and print off the page that says how to become a vendor and treat it like a checklist. It's all gonna be different. But then that'll give you an idea for where you need to really start in that process, because you can find the common denominators.
That is a great
That's a
point.
good point.
Yes, that is a great point. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I don't know quite how to approach this. My name is Phil Gray. I'm running for Congress.
Okay.
My goals are to pay off the national debt.
Mm-hmm.
The only way we will pay the national debt is to save people money, make it beneficial for them to pay a portion as they get out of debt or as they do what they want to do.
Okay.
If they can pay the national debt 8% interest to save them 20%, it benefits them. It knocks down our debt. For this group, for the small business, the minority business that now must jump through a bunch of hoops to qualify for assistance.
Mm-hmm.
I do not want to remove that. I want to add to that you may be able to get loans to do something that you repay at 3% interest.
Okay.
And your payments reduce the national debt and then become available to loan again to others.
Oh, nice.
This can build
That's
on
great.
itself. We can turn the entire national debt into accounts receivable while helping people.
Wow.
I like
I do not propose to remove any of the opportunities that y'all are very familiar with. I propose to throw in additional
Well, that is something that is needed that we haven't touched on.
Absolutely.
Is funding opportunities for small business to jump into this ball game, be it the private sector or the municipality or another government agency, with having capital to operate. Because I do remember you mentioning, young lady, that having funds in your financials is part of qualifying to become, and I'll say this, a prime, but also you're gonna have to show that as even being a sub.
So here's what I know to be true.
Yes.
If you've done the preparation and you have positioned yourself as a credible solution for a government bid, and what you're lacking is capital runway,
Yes.
you can easily get that once you have been accepted for the bid.
Okay.
You can leverage these things, but you don't want to, if you're not in a position where you can at least present yourself and accept that bid, then you have more work to do before you can go out for a government bid.
Sure.
Money's not really your obstacle.
Okay.
Planning is. Would you?
I think you have a different take on that.
How much time we got left?
Thank you for the comment there.
I really
for
appreciate
proposal.
your comment, sir. And as you were talking, you reminded me of something that I think is important to say about certifications. This is not a handout, people. You don't get any favors. It's not a guarantee. You're not gonna. It's not gonna gain you access unless you bring your A game.
Right.
Okay.
So the certification opens up doors.
It
but
opens
you still
up doors.
have to have a proven track record.
You have to have a proven track
For at least
record.
3 years.
You have to have some experience. You have to know what you know in your industry. You have to be able to perform like the big boys do.
Right.
And so I have to say that. So I appreciate what you're saying, because I think that it will be an enormous help. But I have to say this also. As a minority, I've worked with clients. I worked with a woman who had outstanding credit. We don't open up a can of worms here.
Yes.
Outstanding credit. I mean, like a point away from an 800.
Okay.
She worked as an officer for years, paid her house note on time, did everything right by the book. So she's got experience. She's in the health and fitness industry. She's certified in nutrition and decades of experience.
I don't think I know this person.
And she has done everything to get a loan.
Yes. And have the honor.
Capital. Now I bootstrap mine. I'm a risk taker as an entrepreneur. I cashed in 401k. Okay, so I had the money.
Right.
But for everybody, it's
That's
different.
not an option for some people.
That's not an option for some people.
Right.
But it paid off for me, because within 6-7 months, I won my first $1.2 million contract.
No risk.
And
No reward.
no risk, no reward. So, talk to me later as a coach, and I will talk with you more about that. But back to this situation. This woman had tried for 2 years. And of course, she became my coach, health and fitness. And we get to talking, and I began coaching and consulting her. And I introduced her to a business colleague of mine from Oklahoma. And let's just say, to make a long story short, he got her the money.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to tell you what he said. And again, we opened up a little can of worms here, because I think the opportunities are different sometimes for minorities.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
The playing field's a little bit different.
Yes.
And so you have to be, as a business owner, prepared for these things, because she did not get the loan, and she was doing everything right. And I mean, had done everything right. I've never seen anything this perfect laid out with a client.
Right.
And it wasn't until we stepped in with this gentleman, he found the money, and it opened up the doors of opportunity. So back to what I say earlier, 2 things.
Yes.
Resources and relationships.
Yes.
Right.
You got to know who you need to be working with to help you get through some obstacles and challenges to make things happen.
Yes.
If you really want to scale big, if you really want to
Right.
play big, because if you can't, it will hold you back. It will slow things down. And if you like me, passionate, you want to make things happen. You want to sell things. You want to do some things in
Yes.
the community.
And
Offer some internships. Hire some people.
You bring up a very good point because, and we both know Zarin,
Yes.
the city of Dallas.
Hey,
And,
Zarin.
and he had invited me to a meeting that they were discussing moving minority businesses out of the subcategories
Yes, come
who
on.
have been there
Yes.
for 10 years.
Yes.
But still at the same time, because of those limitations
Right.
with access to funds
Yes.
and also access to getting bigger contracts,
Yes.
haven't been able to move up into the prime category.
Exactly.
And so when you're trying to position yourself, you're starting out and you now have this proven track record out there, you have proven that you have the moxie, you've delivered on your contract as a sub, and now you're trying to move up into that prime category.
Yes.
There are still challenges.
Absolutely.
Because one gentleman spoke about working for primes and then moving down and working with minority businesses,
Mhm.
and he just thought that it was just this myth that there were limitations, and he's like, no, once I stepped into that world and found out that resources aren't always available, capital isn't always available to expand, and it's not a thing of knowledge and ingenuity or having the skill set to do the work.
Right.
Well,
That's true.
I'll say it like, kind of going back to my point.
Yes,
Let's say you print t-shirts.
yes,
And you do that in your home and you've got some local vendors and you've been selling your t-shirts. And you decide that you want to sell your t-shirts through Target.
yes.
That's a big change in
Big
scale.
market, yes.
Humongous change in scale. You will not be able to satisfy that contract with your current staff,
No.
equipment, and resources.
No.
Right.
However, because you have successfully been able to print your t-shirts, sell them locally,
Yes.
you can show that demand is consistent and trending in an upward position.
Mhm.
And if you've been operating in that space for enough time to prove that when you stick your neck out, you don't
Yes.
lose your head,
Right.
Yeah.
then
Absolutely.
even
Yes.
though you lack the equipment, resources, and capital to satisfy the target contract, you may still be awarded that contract. And then at that point, you
Ooh, the
will have your
butterflies
choice
really
of
set in.
suitors. You can take it any way you like it at that point, from
Right.
angel money, from a venture capitalist, from somebody who actually is in the business of making t-shirts, has a label behind them,
Crowdfunding.
Yes.
and is willing
Crowdfunding.
to say,
Mhm.
I'll be damned, you got that Target contract. You know what? You can keep the higher percentage of your business,
Mhm.
and
And
I
I'll
will give you
sell
the
that.
resources you'll
Absolutely.
need,
Yeah.
because I want to stay on the train that you're riding. I want to stay on the train you're
So
riding.
you brought up angel money. What exactly is angel money?
Angel money
Tell us
is
so we can get some.
any. So it is a big category that it can be best defined with. It's money to let you do what you need to as a business operator without the formal strings attached to
Okay.
funding.
Okay.
And the terms can be anything from, I know you, we go way back. Do what you need to
Do
with
what
this
you
$500,000,
Uh-huh.
and if you fail, I'll write it off. Boy, you're lucky if you get it like
Oh,
that.
Yes.
To, I'll let you borrow this money at this
At
percent.
2%.
And if you fail, at that point, we're going to pick the conversation back up because your talents could be, it can be
Right.
any which way.
Okay.
But
Okay.
angel money is where your network is going to come in.
Yeah,
And not
okay.
just your network, it's your friend's network.
Right.
Sure.
And if you're able to prove that what you're doing is desirable and you can perform, angel money is
Ooh,
a
it
good option.
sounds like,
But also
yes.
so is private equity money.
Okay.
Private equity money, if you are meticulous and you perform well in your records and financial records, make it easy for them to make the decision, is usually obtainable, and it might for some be a last minute route and for others a first minute route. Private equity at that route, you're typically going to give up controlling interest in your company. However, you
That's
will
true.
have a successful company
Well,
because
you
you'll
know
have a
what?
lot of
That sounds
influence.
like hard money in
Hard
the
money.
real
Yeah.
estate investment world, where you can go to hard money lenders.
Right.
Yeah.
With Fortune Builders, which I'm part of, they do have a gentleman who manages other private money in this pool. And before you are signed off on, he critiques your deal. He goes through every bit of work that's going to be done, the financials on the piece of property, and also your experience level with it.
Right.
So
That's
if
true.
you're a first timer or you're still trying to get that experience in there, he may even, because he's even told me, I looked at a house that was a lot older, that was going to require a lot more work. Even though I was able to talk to those points, he still said, you know what, I think it's still too much for you to bite off at this point. I would feel more comfortable funding a smaller deal
Yeah.
over here, because, and it was a house in the Bishop Arts area.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had the opportunity to go inside and look at it, and there was still a lot of work. I saw knob and tube wiring still in it, so I knew it was going to be a headache. But, you know, with the hard money, you know, shorter time frame on the loan, a little bit higher interest rate, even though he's one of the lowest that I've seen, and still, you know, down payments and fees that you still have to consider in that, but it gives you the liquidity that you need to operate while still paying back the loan during that time.
Right.
I think that your example brings up something really important.
Yes.
Which is that if you're asking for money, you're gonna have to compromise a little bit.
Yes.
Yes, you do.
So, I mean, you know, growth is not comfortable, right?
Right.
How cramped do you think a lobster feels before it can come out of its shell?
Yes.
If you're out there and you're asking for money, really decide what's important to you. Do you have a vision that is so important that it is 100% executed the way you see it? Don't ask for money.
And that's a part of what I was saying earlier to the young lady here who asked the question. I call it counting the cost. You have to count the cost on what you want.
Yes.
You have to count the cost on what's important to you as a business owner. You have to count the cost on how fast do I want to grow. You have to count the cost to, do I want to be nothing against Avon, I like Avon, love Skin So Soft. But do you want to be that kind of business owner, or do you want to be a business owner that is shooting for 6-7 figure income?
Right.
So, yes.
Or do you want to own a business that operates itself?
Right.
Because there are plenty of people who just want to take an idea to the marketplace and they do not want to control it, because that comes with a lot of stress too.
Yes, it does.
Oh yeah, you gotta have the stomach for this.
Yes. So I do want to bring up a question that you alluded to is, you know, you're this business, you're getting started with it, but you have won the bid. So when do you start to see the money? Once you've been awarded the contract?
It can be sometimes years.
Yes.
It can be. But again, once you have that contract, you're able to prove an arc, a trajectory of income. You can put that in your forecasts. That's excellent for the gap right there. The truth is, you win that government contract and you'll start seeing the money from that a few years down the line, but you will see an uptick in business much more immediately. You're welcome to brag about that, and your stock goes up at that point.
Right. So the person is asking, once you win, you've been awarded the contract, and the contracts are signed, sealed, and delivered.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
So
not done until that happens.
right, exactly. So, and trust me, I know I've won lots of contracts in Texas and out of Texas. So when do you start getting paid?
Yes.
You can get paid on a net 30 after you start performing on that contract. You have to begin performing on that contract. Once you win it, there's a time when you go in with the entity, you sit down at the table with the entity, and you begin to discuss how we're going to start performing the terms of this particular contract, the scope of work that was in the bid to begin with.
Right.
And then you start performing. For an example, with my staffing, when I was awarded a contract and I won lots as a prime, When you begin, you go in, you sit down, okay, this is what we're gonna do, the location here, location there. I bring in my team, my recruiters, everybody that's working on this contract, and then we start performing. We have discussed how you're gonna pay me, how am I getting the money in the bank? Because I have to meet payroll.
Yes.
I got bills to pay.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, this is what happens after you get awarded.
Okay.
And then you start performing and you have an agreement on it's a net 30 and
Okay.
how that money is coming in the bank.
Or whatever their terms are.
Typically, we've agreed on this though.
That's part of
back
the
to the
negotiation.
process. It's a part, the negotiation. We've agreed that it's going to be a net 30. Sometimes what I love, you guys are going to love this. What I love is some municipalities, depending on who you're doing business with, I have a contract with the city of Fort Worth. And at that time, I was very concerned about the amount of employees. Can you guys do this in the net 10? I need this money in the net 10.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
And
10
so,
days.
yes, and
Okay.
so it just depends on the entity because the city of Fort Worth is going to be different than the city of Plano. City of Plano is going to be different than Garland and Lancaster. And so all of these things are discussed, agreed upon. It will be in the contract, and then you go from there. So to answer that question, that's pretty much again, I talked earlier about the process of what will happen after you have been awarded a bid. And let me say this also, bids are going to be typically 3 years. They could be 5 years. My contract with Bombardier was 10 years. You have
Or
some contracts
fair
part 20 with what, two 5-year options
to renew.
So to renew. So it's going to depend,
Okay.
but that's a hallelujah day.
What you
When that
said on
happens.
performance, or when you begin to perform is key. But it's also important to remember that with government contracts, they are normally putting out bids for something that's not going to happen until the next fiscal year.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Yes.
Sometimes, because I've had government contracts and I've got clients that I bid for. I bid for some of my clients on government contracts.
Well, yours is a
Sometimes
very immediate need. I'm thinking so much more like materials.
it depends.
Yes,
It
it
does
does
depend because I've got a Native American client and they procure water.
Mm-hmm.
And we were looking at a contract in Delaware and that thing was ready to go by November. So it just depends.
So when it's
It
gonna
always depends on the goods and services, the need of the entity, and when they say, okay, we gotta go now,
Right.
or we can go later.
I'm
So,
just saying,
yeah.
I think it's healthy if we're addressing, people who want to start working with government contracts, and that idea of your financial security must be at the forefront of your mind.
Right.
Don't think of this avenue as a short-term
No.
windfall
Oh, no, it's
or
not.
to make
You're
or
not
break
gonna
for
be
your
2 weeks
business.
in the hole.
No,
This
because-
is something that you plan for and that
and
you
negotiate.
and that is a part of your long-term business goals, because it's not a relationship that they're going to continue to revisit, and it's not an easily won relationship.
No, it's
No.
not. It's not.
No.
Again, you have to be A game ready. You have to bring your A game.
Yes.
Because if you blow it, you're out.
Right.
And to your point, that it's not immediate. I mean, just like with the fair park process. It was
It's been
a
a
year
while.
ago
It's a
that
year ago.
they talked about
Yeah.
even
They've been talking about it
Talking
for years.
Yeah.
bidders and accepting
Mhm.
qualifications from potential bidders
Mm-hmm.
for this.
Absolutely.
They didn't even have everything put together on what they wanted from the bidders.
That's why I think we're not talking about what government could or should be doing differently,
Right.
but if we were, I would love to see us not be so knee-jerk in these reactions and really invite innovators or just people who have an emotional attachment to whatever the project is into an open dialogue before the bid and scope is written. And that way we can make it as big as possible. If what they want to do with Fair Park exceeds the budget or any available grant money, then put that in the RFP that we are also looking for private support.
Right.
Because you get it.
Right, right. And so, one, doing any contract work, bid work with any entity, I would probably venture to say in the private world, because I've been a contractor in the private world, it's a lot different.
It's
and
very
and the
different.
money is different.
Yeah.
And also the speed at which you get the money is also different.
Yes, it is.
Because I was on a net 30 with, when I was a registered dietitian. So when I started looking at, possibly jumping into the funding world of getting the money versus being the contractor with an entity. I mean, for Ryan White funding, this is for HIV. Proposals are deadline is November. You don't get funds until the following March.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing in between that lag time? Just like with, and I hate to use this as an example, but Fair Park has been a perfect example.
Yeah, it really covers
Yes,
yeah.
it covers a
everything
lot
that
of
we're
it.
talking here. Yeah.
So just recently, the committee that reviewed all of the proposals just made their recommendation.
Right.
Now it's going to go to the park board,
Right.
and from there it's going to go to another committee,
Right.
and then from there, eventually
Yeah.
it will trickle down to the city council, who will ultimately make this decision.
Right.
And then there's going to be time in between there before all the entities come together, before the main person who's managing it will then start asking for
Right.
bids and proposals for
Right.
services that they're not going to provide themselves. So
Right.
this has been 2 years in the making.
It has,
just on
yeah,
this.
just on
With
this,
a project like this, I think it is so critical to remember that it's not just a Texas landmark. It's the biggest fair in Texas. It's like
It's-
the iconic idea
Right.
of what Texas is like.
Right.
Big Tex in the middle. I
Yes.
mean, we couldn't even go a year without him.
Oh gosh, no.
Yes.
It-
I mean, so it's known across
It's
the
known.
U.S.
It is.
and
Yeah.
the 5-state region. So
Right.
yes,
But energy-wise, it is typical of a humongous consumption footprint that's replicatable across the nation.
yes.
It is.
So, in the process of whatever is decided, just with the management of Fair Park, I think we can all agree it's ready for a facelift, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That
It
it
is.
would make the city of Dallas it would be a gem of pride
Yes.
if we could pass by that and see something real fancy going
Yes.
on.
Right.
Energy-wise, because I, like you, am an entrepreneur, and
And
I
passionate.
get
And very
paid,
passionate.
but I get paid for my passion and
Absolutely.
for the combination of technologies, my resources, our
Our
relationships
relationship
with
yes.
vendors,
Yeah.
and the part of RFP, I take that on because I want to stretch those dollars.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's because I care about making the biggest solution possible and not about getting the biggest monetary windfall possible. I know that if I am lucky enough to be
Yes.
a part of the project that transforms Fair Park,
Right.
whatever I do there will be seen by the world.
Yes.
Oh,
And there's
it's gonna
plenty of
catapult.
private money, big budgets
Yes.
for me to go and play
Absolutely.
with. Dallas doesn't have that.
Right.
Okay.
We have to fix our
I'm
roads
glad
and
that
other
they
things.
didn't rush this process.
That is instrumental and key.
I'm
that
so
it
glad
wasn't
they
rushed.
didn't rush it because
Yes.
when you rush it, you really aren't paying attention to the opportunities and those small businesses that are out there
Mhm.
who have the skill, they have the capacity, they're ready
Yes.
to be a part of something like this,
Yes.
either as a prime or as a subcontractor.
Yes.
And so I'm really glad that they didn't rush this process. Here.
So we do have a question here. What are some of the opportunities available to a single individual, or do they usually seek bidders who have more employees?
I think it depends on what you're buying.
It
for,
does.
but-
That's a very good question because now you're talking about a sole proprietor. Again, what are your goods and services?
Okay.
What are you selling? And are you selling something to the buyer who's procuring what you're selling?
Right.
So I think it doesn't matter. However, what does matter is the fact that you have to have capacity. If
Okay.
you're going to bid on a contract that's at a value of $100,000, okay, I promise you there's work to be done.
Right.
And so do you have the team? Do you have the management? Do you have a payroll company? Do you have enough insurance? Sometimes the requirement for some of these bids, I was always carrying $2 million
Okay.
Yeah.
for liability. You have to have these kind of things in place. So I think, it doesn't matter, but it does matter. It just depends on.
I think also it's really important to remember that scale is always going to be a factor. Whoever is awarded this contract is likely going to have to scale up to satisfy it.
Right.
And they may not be using hired staff. They may be using contractors. That's very common to see. You know, a contractor to accept the liability, the reputation of their company and good name is on the line at the municipal level. Yeah, and then and it's easier for up and comers then to establish themselves.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. So
And that's their own business name. So that starts building that track record that's critical.
Exactly.
Okay, that is great. So as we can see, it's not a easy process. It's not a quick process.
Not a cakewalk.
So if you're getting started out there and you're building your reputation and name, it sounds like getting involved, getting your feet wet, first and foremost, your relationships are instrumental in all of this. But if you see the opportunities out there, knowing that the timeline can be lengthy and it's not an easy, in 90 days you're going to win this bid and then you're going to start getting money, that if you're in that growth process, go ahead and jump in and get your feet wet and take the risk.
And get in the conversations.
Get in the conversations, follow the process. There is a process, there are procedures. Make sure you know what they are. That's research. Hire a coach. Hello. You know, get with somebody who knows, who can mentor you through the process so you don't fall in the pitfalls that are there.
I would say if you know about yourself that your name is not going to be tarnished by a risk that you want to take, you can get in those conversations before you even decide what your offering is. I would say that's comfortable and advisable. And then be thinking about the government relationships as a long-term thing. It's not something you're going to be doing in your first couple of years. But you need to prepare so that you know what their expectations are, and then you position yourself appropriately.
Awesome.
So
this was great dialogue, and of course, we just scratched the surface.
We really did.
I mean,
we did.
You know, just talk about getting qualified as a bidder, just going through the process of getting certified, finding your niche, and then following your dreams, building your plan to jump into these waters, seeing how you can grow your business from a private side, and then scaling out to take on contracts, how to leverage yourself to be a sub and learn. Because there may be primes out there that are willing to take the risk for you to help learn and grow yourself and get into it, because guess what? Somebody did that for them.
Cydney, my first contract coming out of the gate was as a subcontractor. The value of it was $1.2 million. It was on and popping from there because trust me, I learned through that process. I learned from that prime. We developed a really incredible relationship. And when more contracts started coming out on the street, I started bidding as a prime. I was getting phone calls and referrals through the chambers. It was awesome.
And it's built in mentoring.
Oh, absolutely. The mentoring that takes place during that process is phenomenal. Now, I'm not saying that it's all sugar and spice and everything nice, because sometimes you need to realize, oh, no, you can't do it this way because of this, this, and this. But that's all good because it's part of the learning process.
And that's critical. You've got to go into it knowing that every time you get told no or your paperwork gets rejected, there is a lesson in there for you.
A lesson in it.
And if you want that business, you better learn the lesson or you're not getting that business.
Exactly.
So you have to have tough skin with all of this. And there is no reward without taking the risk on it. But I definitely want to bring back your point, because we talked about this after your first time on the show, is when you have that idea, making sure that you're protecting your intellectual property and how to get involved in the game. Because that's how you find your niche. That's how you are able to come up with your proposal and present it, but also not have your idea taken away from you and being burned by it. So any last minute questions or comments from anyone in the audience? No? I saw you taking lots of notes there. So I want to thank you ladies for coming on the show. Thank you for coming back.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
glad
thank
that
you
you
so
had a
much.
great time to come back, and yes, you'll be back.
I want to thank you. This is my gift to you.
Thank you so
Our
much.
assignment for
Oh, you know what? Just having you as part of my network is amazing. We know quite a few people
Yes,
together,
we do. Yes, we
and I want to thank Cecil Lofton for introducing me to you, because you have been incredible just with being a sounding board, just having those conversations and dialogue about how to get started,
Yes.
how to leverage younger minds in growing your business.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we will sit back and say, oh, well, you know, this is the way that I want to do it. And not being flexible in receiving information, because
Yeah,
somebody is saying, hey, yeah, I like and believe with what you're doing, but hey, tweak it a little bit like this, or have you considered this?
And that's important, because this is not an attack on your person.
No.
You really have to understand that the business relationship with anybody you're trying to cultivate is all about, does this fit what you need?
Yes.
And so
That's why you have to have a stomach for it.
that's exactly
And
right.
tough skin.
And tough skin, yes,
Mhm.
yes. So
Yeah.
again, ladies, thank you so much. I mean, this is just the beginning of the conversation, and if anyone wants to get in contact with these ladies, please just reach out to me. I'll put you in contact with them. Amazing dialogue. Thank you so much.
Can I
Yes.
just real quickly say that if you are an owner of a business and have energy needs, and you are at any point going to be changing some of the structure in your business, go to my website. That's my intellectual property that I'm happy to share with you there.
Okay.
By category, it's
And
energy,
we will be posting it.
energy mitigation, mightym.com. But yeah, just internally it'll help you keep your overhead low to just know what you can do when you construct it.
Great.
That's free information.
And free information here is, if you want to start a business or grow a business, I am launching a new online business school for entrepreneurs across the country called Heyward-Bey International Premium Building Your Business Coaching Programs. I take you from starting from the very beginning to what you're going to do next within 6 or 7 months. I can guarantee when you get done with my coaching program, you'll be able to know how to bid on these contracts and win. So get ready.
Yes.
My website is www.heywardbeyinternational.com.
And I tell you what, I mean, just knowing you ladies and talking to you, I mean, the passion is there, wisdom and knowledge is there. So these are resources for your network, and I'm glad that I was able to bring them to you. So next Saturday, the Dallas Homeowners League is having a housing boot camp for people who are wanting to get into that game and also become a homeowner. So we will be out there with them talking to the Dallas Homeowners League about how they're helping everyone become that homeowner and reach their dreams. So until next Saturday, thank you again, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will see
Bye-bye.